Sherman.
Thanks for being our first guest in this first episode of our Insights podcast. So can you tell me more about yourself before we get into the topic about security?
Sure. So thanks for inviting me, and so good to be the first guest. so basically, maybe I just give a bit of background on myself, right? So I've been in IT for I think over 20 years. So for security, I've probably been here doing the security about 15. So I came across IT probably more on from a young age where you want to play games with a computer. Then you sort of gradually think of something that is sort of relevant to computers, and then there's IT,
right?
so that you can continue to play games. So that's how I sort of got into the industry, and then from security wise, it's sort of. This is interesting because every day is changing, right? I mean, it's even changing faster than the traditional IT stuff. So, I've done from application development, service delivery. I've worked with systems from IBM mainframes to mid-range to cloud today, right? So it's
touched and dabbled in everything.
that's bad because that tells you how old I am.
But now you're a specialist in security. So you're talking about games, right? So what are the games are you into actually?
Yeah, so I still do my own gaming rig. So I still have my last one is still a good cool PC, which I actually playing today, Elden Ring.
Okay.
Yep. So it's something that released this year, which is it's quite popular. I didn't have much time to play it, but
I can see why.
Unfortunately, but a lot of first-person shooters, relevant and things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So anyway, today's topic, right? We want to talk about this. This paper that we recently published, right? Is really about proactive security and why it's important in this digital-first era, right?
Yep.
And just to kickstart this conversation, from your perspective, are organizations today proactive enough in their approach to cybersecurity?
I guess it depends. I think the answer would be say yes and no, right? Because it depends on the maturity of the organization, right? So as I guess from a bank perspective, they'll probably be more mature. They will have a lot of more proactive, people and tools and processes versus say a typical manufacturer, right, where security is not their primary business driver, right, or they have less things from their perspective to protect. But in general, I think we are seeing a shift. Things are still, people are still looking at moving to a more proactive approach so that you can understand, what's the risk to the organization, what's critical to the organization, and then with today's threat landscape, and things are happening quite fast, rapidly, and you need to find ways. The attackers are finding new ways to weaponize things and then able to attack, right? So from a defensive perspective, we're also seeing that move, and then there's a lot of things where we talk about attack surface management, where we pretty much is really looking at what's the assets you have, what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities, and then that is how we can gain some contextual insights into what's the organization's risk, and then what are the imminent threats.
Yeah, I mean this seems like a huge problem right these days. Like if no action are taken, then organization is going to be toasted, right? Every week you're going to see like news headlines about data breaches, cyber threats, cyber attacks, companies getting into all these issues, right?
Yeah.
So now we are talking about like proactive security. Maybe you want to give us some examples. Maybe let me understand better.
Sure. I mean today you can see probably on at least a weekly basis you see somewhere somehow got breach, and that's quite a common, and that's probably the tip of the iceberg, right? That's reported, which is
reported ones, but there are unreported ones, I guess.
Yep. So when you want to look at proactive approach, you want to look at what's preemptively, you want to look at what's vulnerable within your organization, right? So that you can address them, you can, before anything gets exploited, right? So when you design security, you should design from a secure by design perspective, right? And then that's across organization and across all your infrastructure, your applications, and your people, right? Because people is always also a last line of defense. So you should look at things like security awareness, right? Is the people, if there's a policy or process but they are not following it, that is as good as not having it, right? So things like you want to identify what are the assets in your organization, your hardware, software, on-prem, in the cloud, what are the vulnerabilities for those systems, right? Even applications. I mean, that's something that organizations should be doing, right? Segment your network. So if you do want to have your guest Wi-Fi with your network running on the same network, right? So that's quite fundamental, but you'll be surprised that
Oh, really?
yeah, their organization could be misconfiguration, could be when they do some troubleshooting, things were plugged wrongly, differently, and it's all kinds of interesting things. So they should do an audit, right? You hear a lot about zero trust approach or zero trust architecture, right? Where you want to make sure that who is using the application, right? So that you can verify that, and then those that you're logging in or the assets that you're coming into are all properly configured. And of course, probably last but not least, look at threat hunting also, right? So, if you have the telemetry, then we should be able to have someone or within the organization, or you have someone to be able to help you to look at the threats in the environment, potential threats, because today's attackers are quite sneaky in the sense that they might be there for months and years, and while slowly they are trying to get your data out slow and steady, right?
Oh,
so
it's like a leech. Your
yeah,
latch onto you,
correct. So for with a threat hunt, then you can at least look at data that's 90 days or a year, over a year.
Right. So just now you talk about cloud, right? I'm just curious. So, a lot of organizations are like cloud-first organizations. Do you see these organizations being more susceptible to this type of cyber threats?
Actually, not, because when you if you do it properly, it's probably not, because there's always like best practices, and so the challenge is always about does the people, when they first design it, are they doing it properly, right? So cloud native organization have a different perspective on how things should be done compared to a legacy, right? Legacy, you have a lot of legacy applications, systems and things like that. But from a cloud, it's normally new built, and then you can, it's always typically it's more application driven, right? So you look at we hear a lot about Kubernetes, containers, build pipeline, code libraries. So it's a lot of application related risks, and then you need to have the understanding about what the tools and processes that you can help to mitigate risk, right? Compared to say a legacy where so a non-cloud business, we'll look at, let's say, virtual machines, and then the scalability is also different, right? From a cloud organization, if you're, let's say, e-commerce, over Christmas, you can spin up hundreds of servers, hundreds of containers, right? You don't need to have, but for traditional organization, they may have to build servers and things like that.
Like
that physical could be physical, or even VMs, right? Even you use VMs, yeah. So there's slight variance on how, and each of them has their own best practices to secure them properly.
Basically just the difference is in the model. So what security controls will better fit that model? The
tools and how you want to manage those tools.
Okay, I see. So I mean, obviously the opposite of proactive security we are talking about, right, is reactive, right? For businesses today, I mean, how do you see them shifting from a reactive to proactive approach?
So proactive is that we want to plan everything before you get hit by an incident, right? So you hear a lot in the industry about shift left, right? Where it's when you say shift left, it means before the boom, right? So the boom is it's a term where I think when the U.S. Army went to Vietnam, there was a lot of IEDs, and then they always talk about having an IED explosion. Then that's an incident to them, and then you have the shift left concept where you try to prevent things from happening, right? Instead of trying to react on the right side of the boom. So that's how a lot of terminology comes into cybersecurity. A lot of so it's some interesting background, right? So from a traditional controls, you have like your firewalls, your antivirus, and things like that which is pretty static, reactive. But you may not have understanding of what are all your assets, right? You have may not have visibility of say your building control systems, your Wi-Fi controllers. I mean, what are they doing? Could be someone plugging in their own Wi-Fi controller and with 5G card and connecting into your network, right? Who knows? So the challenge is, of course, then there's a lot more destructive ransomware today, right? Organizations are feeling that, you know, if they don't do something, they're going to have a challenge in trying to starting off on the back foot, rather than, you know, when you actually be able to proactively approach the risk and then able to manage the risk. So things like you want to deploy, say, EDR tool, right, a endpoint detection and response tool, so that you can respond to a critical incident, rather than, you know, you having some antivirus tool that which is can't do much about it, right? And then of course things like say your inline sandboxing, you know, where you can the tool which actually can hold your malicious files for analysis before actually releasing back to the network, right? Right. So that's some of the controls that, you know, organizations should look at. And then of course today we look at zero trust. You look at, you know, people are working hybrid, right, in the office, out of office, could be anywhere, and then you would need to be able to have planning to secure the critical assets, right, for their accessing your critical applications, right? So these are things that you should be able to define and then and mitigate those risks.
I think all of us are like sitting behind a form of applications or one way or another, be it in a business or be it as a consumer. I mean, to some point, I feel like we are becoming very oblivious to what's going on behind the applications or the apps, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess it's more or less intentional, right? You want to have that interface so that it's easier for the user to use it.
Yeah, to use it because it's a UX, UI experience, you know, make sure that it's seamless. But, you know, at the back of it is like top concerns around things like, you know, the network, the cloud assets, the data storage. I think these are all top concerns faced in the paper in terms of cybersecurity.
Correct.
So of all of this, right, which one do you see being the most important?
So from my perspective, right, I mean, everything is important. It's just the number one would probably, from my perspective, would be data, right? So because data, it's something that would probably be critical to most organizations, and that should be the number one thing that you should be protecting, right? I mean, there's a lot of models about protecting your data. You secure your network. There's multiple layers of protection. I mean, it's like putting it in a castle and then surrounding with defenses, right? So, but I mean, when we talk about all this digital transformation that's going on, that's been going on for a long time, right? Since the days of client server, you know, your ERPs, your CRMs. Not sure where
old school stuff.
Yes, old school to you, but I actually lived through those years.
It was old, new school to many.
Yeah. So even then, but today you're seeing a lot of more as people move to the cloud, to the SaaS business, or the SaaS applications. You see that they are more looking at renting or, you know, of the service consumption-based model, right? So the economics of it is different, rather than organization trying to own that asset, right? So you're seeing that trend, the economies of speed, I would say, right? Where things will in the past it will be like a step ladder, right? You from this state to a to-be state, and then you build on it, right? But in today's world, it's really like a rocket, you know. it's keep going. So it's really about how the organization will fail faster, and, you know, evolve that and be agile to their business, right? To their end consumers or their end users, right? So of course, things like using your AI, ML, artificial intelligence or machine learning to uncover new things for their new products, new patterns, right? So. And we're seeing a lot of Web3 stuff coming up, so right. So those are digital ledger stuff that will again have a different change, but that will be a data-centric from a personal perspective. So
it's more the user.
Yeah, but of course, when we say data-centric, normally you really want to understand where does the organization's crown jewels reside, right? What application using it? How is it being accessed, who's using it? So basically the 5W1H kind of questions, right? Okay, I mean, it's quite popular. Where is it? How is it? Who's accessing it? You know, why are these people getting access to it? Things like that. So once you're able to have that understanding, then you want to classify those data, and then able to design that correct protections around it, right? Because you could be different kind of data, right? It could be a credit card data, for example. It could be a medical data. The different protection, different compliance requirements. So you need to understand that as an organization, right? And then you need to identify who's going to access those, why they need to access those, right? But it's not really a set and forget. I mean, normally you do it once. I mean, some organizations will do it like once and then, okay, but you should really have a plan to constantly review that and assess whether these people why are they doing it? Why are they accessing those data?
Okay. Is it a common thing for like businesses to just like set and forget it kind of approach? I don't think that sounds very good.
You'll find it quite common in most. Unfortunately, in most organizations, this is not really. I mean, of course, if they are mandated for compliance by the regulatory boards, then
you mentioned like
banks, financial institutions, then or medical institutions, if they have on HIPAA or whatever, then yes, they will do their audit at least once a year. But most organizations, for especially small organizations, they will have challenge in trying to focus on that. They will rather focus on driving their business goals. And cybersecurity is usually a afterthought for their. And of course, sometimes they also lack skills because cybersecurity skill sets is also quite hot.
I mean, cybersecurity talents is on a crunch now.
We are short.
Obviously, businesses don't have the bandwidth today, right?
Correct.
And perhaps businesses like this, they should look at having a managed security services provider to kind of partner in and support them. So what would you recommend them, like businesses, to look at when they want to like go after or select a MSSP partner?
So MSSP definitely will help organizations because then they can take away all the day-to-day challenges of monitoring it, right? So first thing, usually you probably need to be licensed by the regulator. So for us, we are licensed for MSS and penetration testing in Singapore, because Singapore there is a regulatory body that actually licenses all this security practice. Second, you want to have the vendor would have to have a SOC that operates 24/7 by 365, right? You don't want to have someone that runs a 12-hour shift and then good night. So you want someone to be actually monitoring the alerts that's coming in and not wait till the next morning.
So the customer can sleep in peace.
Yes, exactly, right. Then of course the SOC should be then staffed with trained people, right? Because they are SOC, although it's a shared service, but because they have the scale, then they can actually maintain the skill sets or help the people to move up to a higher level skill sets, right? So they can maintain that, and then of course a proven track record to providing a service to organizations within your sector or within your scale, right? Of course, the last but not least probably would be things like looking around managed detection and response, right? Because that's something that traditional MSS managed security services providers don't really do. So it's also evolving, where they normally will just do the security monitoring and then call you up and say please fix this or please do that, right? But today, I think the expectation is for organizations to respond much faster to threats, and then a managed detection response would be able to, at least from the SOC perspective, they will be able to help respond to a potential threat, and then able to even block those threats to prevent that from infecting the organization, right? So basically, from a organization perspective, you want to automate. Look at those other suspicious attacks and automate that, and before all this impacts your environment.
Okay. I just want to get a short response from you about this. I think when it comes to all this security threat in this landscape, right? I'm not sure like whether board level in organizations are taking it seriously, because they are not the ones like going through the day-to-day process, managing all these things. But they only kind of like feel the impact when it happens, which is like too late.
Yes.
So do you think this is happening, like our board level being more serious about security today?
Definitely. I mean, personally, they are in certain countries they are personally liable, right? So definitely the board members are looking at it quite seriously, even though they don't experience it day to day, right? So because they're liable for negligence. So we are seeing a lot more board members looking at at least on their regular meetings, they want to have a cybersecurity
Council or sort,
or at least an update on what's the status of the organization, what exposure the organization has, what are they compliant with, and how significant the incidents and the risks. And that. So you will see we are seeing that, and then in Asia, I think we're also seeing that the board members are getting concerned also. Although they may not be liable, there's no compliance reason, but definitely because of the reputation risk, right?
Yeah, that's a very big thing that no matter how much money you have, you can't buy it.
Yeah, because then you're backpedaling and you got to figure out what's gone wrong.
I mean,
explain
so
to
in this case, right? I mean, would a security assessment be a good start to look at an organization's security posture?
Yep, definitely, right. So from a assessment point of view, right, it gives the organization that visibility, right? So for us, I mean, we sort of done a few of these things with different customers, right? And that helps the customer to, if they're not doing it internally, then they need to find a partner to do it. And we've actually helped them to identify their risks in the organization, what are their technologies, the processes, the challenges, then verify all those things are in place so that they can actually safeguard against those threats, right? Or if there are missing items or missing weak linkages, then they can actually have a roadmap to map to what are the technology or processes or things that you need to change, right, so that they can be safe. So when the assessment is done by the assessor, they will identify all the areas of risk for the organization, and then it could be something as simple as a weak password, right, which most organizations, but you'll be surprised that like the SMEs.
Password 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, or someone's sticking a password on their screen, and it's amazing, right? So these are things that the assessment will help organizations. Then we'll interview with because the IT people may be the security people, and also maybe the desktop support, right? So so especially for small organizations, they really need a lot of this kind of help. And then for larger enterprise, we will see also a lot of third-party and fourth-party risks, right? So for example, a bank, right, you may have thousands of suppliers, right? And then what if those suppliers, some of them are using another supplier, a fourth-party supplier, which actually has a critical path or critical impact to your organization if they get a breach, right? So all these things, we are seeing the larger enterprises, they start looking at, actually they already started looking at third-party, but even fourth-party risk, they actually start evaluating.
I mean, like there are so many dependencies in this aspect of like security, right? Like I mentioned security supply chain. Right?
Yep, supply chain.
So it's like Murphy's law. One thing go wrong, everything will go wrong. So maybe just to close out this conversation, right? Lastly, I just want to ask you, what's one advice, right, you would give to someone who is probably not maybe this person is not a security specialist, but this person needs to convince his or her boss about the importance of proactive security. What advice would you give this person?
Right. Okay. Well, this can be, but I'll just try to shorten it so that in a nutshell.
Yes, in a nutshell, yes.
Okay. I mean, security breach happens everywhere, and even in the most prepared. You look at the list of breach organizations, right? From banks to defense ministries and stuff like that, right? So even your most prepared, you have a risk of being breached, and you want to be proactive to mitigate or reduce that risk, right, or the impact of that after breaches. So you need to be resilient, right? We talk about resilience now. Nowadays we don't really talk about preventing breaches. We talk about cyber resilience.
Cyber resilience. Okay.
Yeah. So key points. I mean, first of all, you should look at what assets you have. The visibility is critical, right? Know what you have, and then how you can protect that. We want to be able to have in place a detection and response capability, right? Able to detect, protect, and respond. I guess that's so that you can properly protect your crown jewels and then make sure that you get the right protection around that. And then response if there's an incident. So which means you have like an incident response plan, able to exercise those incident response plan on a regular basis so that everyone from the exco level to the technical team will have that exposure to the plan, and so that when the actual thing happens, that you minimize the time to respond to the actual incident, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think those are really good points. I better write it down later. Yeah, I can't remember them. But yeah, thank you, Matthew. Thanks for taking time to speak with me today. And
Yep.
I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, hope to see you
Okay,
again.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.